Morning team, it's me, your favourite Jordan at the screen, and today I wish to talk to you about Women Who Should Be in Prison, episode 5. And today's episode is Lavinia Woodward, a case study in gynocentrism. And I know what you are going to say, my dear and loving audience. You're going to say, but Jordan, isn't every episode a case study in gynocentrism? And yes, I would argue that is the case. They are all case studies in gynocentrism. But for today's episode, I wanted to focus on this one case in a bit more detail. Because for me, it is incredibly grotesque, and also because it's received a lot of media attention. A lot of people, decrying it for the classism, so say, involved about how she's this rich, white, tough girl who's basically gotten off with stabbing her boyfriend in a coke-induced rage. So I figured, hey, I'm going to take the time to really delve into this case. So that's what I'm here to do today. So let us start with a brief overview of what actually happened. So Lavinia, a young girl studying medicine at University of Oxford, on the 30th of December 2016, was spending some time with her boyfriend. He'd come around to visit her. And she started drinking, got a bit out of hand, and the boyfriend got worried. So tried contacting the mother of Lavinia on Skype to basically say, help, your daughter's a bit out of hand. Now, she didn't respond too kindly to this, so threw her laptop at him, a glass and a jam jar, and then grabbed a bread knife and went to hack and slash and stab at her boyfriend. And in the scuffle, he suffered a couple of 1 centimetre cuts to his hand and a 3 centimetre cut to his leg. She was then arrested for this, and we then had the trial and the hearing back in May, I believe it was, and that's when Judge Ian Derek Pringle QC decided to defer the hearing until September 25th, just to see if she'll exhibit good behaviour, to get over her drug habit, to prove she's remorseful. And it's not unusual for this sort of thing to happen, where the mitigating factors of mental health and drug use are put forward. This does happen on occasion. And then, so we had the hearing on the 25th, and as we were all expecting, she was given a suspended sentence. And that's where all the controversy has come from, the fact that, hey, hang on a second, this girl's gone absolutely fucking psycho, and her boyfriend stabbed him in the leg, whilst off her tits on coke, and she's avoided jail. Because you'd think normally when someone's off their tits on coke, because I think she was on coke that night, or someone who's a cokehead at least, and who was intoxicated and then decided to stab somebody, you'd think they'd go to jail for that. That sounds like a prison-worthy offence. Apparently not. So let's work our way slowly through it, piece by piece, starting with the sentencing remarks. Let's go through them a little bit. So I want to go through the aggravating features, and I'm going to be following the sort of plan, the structure that I had from my backbencher article. This is where I'm getting most of the information from, so if you want to read the article, go there, because I'm basically going through the article and expanding on some of the points and just exploring them a bit more. So the aggravating features in HHJ Pringle QC sentencing remarks. Let's read it. So, next, I need to decide whether there are any aggravating features which raise the seriousness of this matter, and whether there are any mitigating features which reduce the seriousness. There are certainly no statutory aggravating features. Bear that in mind. Bear that in mind is me saying that, not in the original quote. However, there is one non-statutory aggravating feature, namely that at the time of the offence you were heavily under the influence of alcohol. Whilst that in part was as a result of a previous and highly damaging relationship, you were old enough and intelligent enough to realise that overindulgence would severely affect your behaviour. And I like how he mentions the previous and highly damaging relationship, and also says old and intelligent enough to realise that overindulgence would affect her behaviour. Remember those points, because we will somewhat return to them later. I'm just going to quickly correct my microphone. There you go. Hopefully that's still in range. So, having said that, saying that there's no aggravating factors, I decided to have a look into it, because I thought to myself, surely there would be, if you're, a drug addict and you were drunk at the time it happened and you're just a psycho bitch, surely somewhere in the aggravating factors it'll say something, obviously not the phrase psycho bitch, but something to that effect. So here's 4 that I managed to find. So number 1, an intention to commit more serious harm than actually resulted from the offence. Commission of an offence while under the influence of alcohol or drugs. Use of a weapon to frighten or injure a victim, and deliberate and gratuitous violence or damage to property over and above what is needed to carry out the offence. I think you can see where I'm going with this, because point 1 about an intention to commit a more serious harm than actually resulted from the offence. Yeah, you could tell that she really wanted to cause him harm by the fact that she threw a glass that jammed on a laptop at him, only to then grab a fucking bread knife of all things and try to hack and slash and stab at him. And the fact that he only received minor injuries, so we're told, is actually a godsend for him, because she clearly wanted to fuck him up. You don't run at someone and, hold all this shit at them and go at them with a bread knife, unless if you want to cause them serious harm. So why the fuck this was not included as a aggravating factor, I do not know. Actually, I do know. It's called gynocentrism. Why am I being an idiot? Anyway, point number 2. Commission of an offence while under the influence of alcohol or drugs. And this was mentioned in his sentencing remarks. But then he says there are certainly no statutory aggravating features. But then he includes that as a non-statutory aggravating feature. I couldn't find any difference between what is a statutory and non-statutory aggravating feature. I'm going to assume, because I'm not a lawyer, man, I'm just going to assume that if they're included on the list of the aggravating factors, then they are statutory. Because I found a law website that included them. I'm just assuming those that are included on the list are statutory. Again, I'm not a lawyer, man. Anyway, yeah, so she was, inebriated when she did it. So there's another factor. Number 3, use of a weapon to frighten or injure a victim. Yeah, she used multiple weapons. So, how the fuck you didn't realise? I mean, like, is a bread knife. See, I've got a bread knife here as a prop. In fact, I've actually got 2. Yeah. Because I thought this one looked a whole lot more frightening. I thought, the audience might see that and think I'm trying to overemphasise the threat of the attack. So here's one that looks fucking terrifying. I wouldn't want, some crazy psycho cokehead bitch coming at me with one of these. And then here's another one. This one doesn't look so bad, but it's still pretty, pretty long and would cause you a lot of damage. Anyway. So those are the weapons. And then number 4, deliberate and gratuitous violence or damage to property over and above what is needed to carry out the offence. Well, she didn't want him communicating with her mother. That's what she was trying to prevent from happening. So yeah, I think she went a bit over the fucking top to stop this from happening by, hurling a glass, a jam jar laptop at him. Because I think she could have just stopped the laptop. I'm assuming that the boyfriend was trying to Skype the mother on the laptop. So just hurling the laptop would have sufficed, do a rice gum and smash it. But there you go. But no, even though, deliberate and gratuitous violence, above what is needed to carry out the offence, that quite clearly fucking happened, but for some bizarre reason, not included. Okay then. If only I looked like this, fucking hell. Oh well. The shit that I could do. So, the next point I wanted to talk about is drug and alcohol abuse, because, it's quite a key part. And a lot of people have used this to defend her, saying, oh, poor her, she's just a young thing, look at her. You can't say no to that face when she's off her tits on coke and she's pissed out her brains. It's not her fault. She was drunk. And that actually is a defence used quite often if you go through my list of women who should be in prison that has been mentioned a few times, that, oh, you were drunk, you didn't mean to do it. Don't get drunk then, mate. But anyway, so I find it interesting, though, how it is mentioned in the mitigating features her drug and alcohol use. What's the quote? Fourthly, as the reports from the experts make clear, you suffer from an emotionally unstable personality disorder, a severe eating disorder, and alcohol and drug dependence. Now, one would be inclined to argue that someone with a personality disorder who has a history of drug and alcohol dependence should, when being sentenced for having a proclivity for violence, have these factors considered as a negative. Yet, bizarrely enough, unstable personality disorder, severe eating disorder, and alcohol drug dependence is included as mitigating features. Well, I can understand eating disorder being included in mitigating features. I don't know why it's necessary to reference. I don't understand how an eating disorder would make it turn into a psycho bitch and stab people, but whatever. So her alcohol drug dependence, even though it fueled her assault, is included as a mitigating feature. And making a mess. Another notable allegation levied against our young dear Lavinia was she lied about having cancer for 4 months. Yeah, lied about having cancer for 4 months, and she was doing that to hide her drug use. So this was a premeditated action. And so when her boyfriend confronted her on this, because you get called out by this sort of thing, he found out because one of the nurses let it go. She claimed, the girlfriend, Lavinia, she claimed that the charade was to disguise mental health problems. Her drug problem, in fact, was so bad that she would often leave the room and then return and behave maniacally. Sometimes she would start taking cocaine at 10 a.m. just to get her through the day. That's how bad her drug use was, that she was, starting early in the morning, keep going all through the day, being behaving maniacally, or manically even, not like a maniac, manically. Oh, I can English. Behaving manically. And she would cover all this up by saying she had cancer. Yeah, a real nice person. Really, fulfilling, wholesome kind of girl. Yeah. Old enough and intelligent enough to pull this sort of shit off, don't you think? But also, he mentioned about, because he was deferring the sentence so that she could, rehabilitate, so she could, clean up her act. So what did she do in these 4 months? Well, she jet-setted back off to Milan, to a family's cute villa, £1.5 million villa. Spent her summer there shopping and doing all that, and was moaning on social media about how she can't go out clubbing anymore in London because she keeps getting recognised. Now, these may sound like contradictory comments. I'm going to defer your sentencing for 4 months because you need to get yourself off drugs and booze. Oh, poor you. You can't go out in London clubbing because people recognise you. I mean, this doesn't work. So I really do question her rehabilitation. And in fact, talking about her rehabilitation, she did go to a counsellor to seek help about her drug use and eating disorder. But no mention seems to be made in the press or in the sentencing remarks about her seeing a counsellor for her personality disorder. Now, I may be wrong in this assumption, but I would argue that her personality disorder would be the root of all these issues. She would use the drugs to mask her symptoms, to try to shut out the problems she was having. And this eating disorder would also then come from the drug use and from the personality disorder, and the rage and the violence would come from the personality disorder. So really you'd think that whatever this personality disorder may be it BPD or something, that she would want to seek help for this, because then that would in turn snowball the rest of the problem being helped and cured and fixed, or whatever, some sort of solution coming out of it. Yet bizarrely, she didn't seek help for it. So I'm left to conclude that either she doesn't care about having this personality disorder, whatever it may be, or she didn't seek help for it because it does not exist. I leave the conclusions to be drawn by my loving audience, because I don't fucking know, honestly. Yeah, so those who are not intimately informed of the case would agree with Pringle when he called this incident a one-off. When she entered this courtroom, she did so with a near clean slate, aside from the bread knife attack and drug use. However, this is not the case. Our young, innocent, one-off psycho bitch has a history of being a psycho bitch, as even recognised by HHJ Ian Pringle QC himself. There were 2 previous counts of assault on the 25th of November and 12th of December 2016. Even though, Pringle said that this is a complete one-off, it kind of actually isn't. He recognises this, but hey, maintaining consistency when you're a judge, I mean, fuck it, why would you ever need that? It's not like you're presiding over a matter of law. But hey, so these 2 assaults had occurred. In one of these assaults, she allegedly choked her boyfriend to the point where he fell unconscious, but I'll get to that in a moment. These 2 assaults were ordered to lie on the court file. Now, when I read this, I didn't quite know what this means, because as I said, I'm not a lawyerman. But in non-legal speak, from my understanding of it, this means the offence is kind of essentially all but ignored. There is no verdict on the incident, because the prosecution will chase a higher offence to get a a longer sentence. It's like if somebody committed murder and theft. It's like they're not going to bother, chasing the petty theft because they can get him for murder. That's my understanding of the law. So you can't do anything about it once they've been ordered to lie on the court file without leave of the Crown Court or the Court of Appeal. Well, we'll talk about that. You think, hey, we can return to it then, in which case, but we'll talk about that later on. And so, yeah, even though we have these two assaults, which young Miss Woodward denied, even though there were these assaults, Pringle later remarks that principally at the age of 24, you have no previous convictions of any nature whatsoever. And yes, whilst this is technically true, there would be extra convictions and offences to consider had he accepted the two previous assaults. And I don't know why these assaults weren't treated as separate incidents and thus had their own separate trials. I don't know how the law works, but I'm assuming they must have all been compiled together. But it's amazing what being pretty and female gets you, how you can beat the crap out of someone over a sustained period of time, ultimately stabbing them in the leg, and it's like, hey, all those previous assaults, don't worry about it. But yeah, going back to the throttling the boyfriend to such an extent he passed out, that sounds a whole lot like sustained domestic abuse. And now, you'd think that when someone is repeatedly domestically abusing their partner, there'd be a huge kick and fuss about it. But the reason is all dropped in order to lie on the court file is principally because she denied them ever happening. So, essentially the message we're getting from this is, if you're accused of being a domestic abuser and being, violent in a domestic setting, you can have it all dropped so long as you deny it, and you're young and pretty. And, Women's Aid worries about accusations of domestic abuse from women not being taken seriously. But, no, there was even more. Stories of her being a psycho bitch. Allegations from a fellow university student that she'd attacked this student in an unprovoked assault. And in a separate incident, she allegedly made violent threats to another student when this friend tried to help her overcome her drug use. These threats were even passed on to the police, and other students have claimed to be intimidated by the rather unsavoury character she had coming in and out of her room at all hours of the day. These people were there to sell her drugs. One student who got on the wrong side of her claimed she had a very short fuse, and the proctor's office at Oxford were aware that lots of people had problems with her. So the police are fully aware that she's a psycho bitch. The university is fully aware that she's a psycho bitch. This has all been brought forward in the press. Allegations and accusations of violence against, or from Lavinia, have been brought against her in the courtroom. And yet, despite all of this, Ian Pringle decided that this stabbing incident was a complete one-off. Yeah, I don't quite know how he got to that, but hey. And so, despite all of this, even calling it a one-off, I also find it absolutely staggering that Pringle could say that a present sentence would be too severe. Arguing that these are the actions of an extraordinary, able young lady. And that this only occurred because she had a troubled life. The only people who've had troubled lives in relation to her are people who've been in her near vicinity, specifically university students and romantic partners. But oh, she's such a victim, bless her. But in regards to this troubled life, I am inclined to question just exactly how troubled her life has been. Because she lived and grew up in Sartori, Italy, with her multi-millionaire parents in their £1 million villa. She attended the British School of Milan, formerly known as the Sir James Henderson School, where fees can hit $16,000 a year. She frequently travels around the world, jet-setting here, there and everywhere, going on luxurious shopping sprees and, having all the high-end clothes. She was often seen in university with a £1,000 Chanel bag, so, she's not without money. She attended Oxford, scoring the highest in the preclinical tests, and her name appears on multiple medical papers in prestigious academic journals. So, she's basically had a high-flying life, everything bought and paid for. She's had success after success after success. Everything has been rosy and cushy for her. Just exactly how was her life troubled? Because I'm missing that memo. However, some ardent followers of the case could hurl at me the fact that she'd suffered domestic abuse in a previous relationship. The BBC, or BBC Local Oxford, reported on it, or briefly mentioned it, how the Defence Counsel mentioned it in mitigation. And then, what's his face? The secret barrister, I'm looking at the article now, echoed this in his report on the New Statesman, saying about how she's a victim of domestic abuse. Yet, looking at the sentence and remarks, when mitigating factors were discussed, no abuse was mentioned. And considering the huge furore at the moment about domestic abuse and how it's everywhere, everyone's just talking about domestic abuse, especially with the influence of Women's Aid. Oh, my belly is doing the rumble. You know, basically, domestic abuse is the big thing. If you accuse someone of domestic abuse, you get a shitload of attention. You know, the police are all over it. It's massive. You don't, fleetingly make accusations of domestic abuse and they just get dropped. Okay, there are too many lobbying interests involved. And yet, despite this, no mention of domestic abuse is made in the sentence and remarks. All that is said is she'd been through a damaging relationship. Now, a relationship doesn't have to be abusive or even violent to be damaging. Yet, they still argue this. What was the quote? What was he said? He said, "Sadly, you are still suffering from the effects of a very damaging previous relationship with another who had introduced you to Class A drugs." And that's it. That's the only sentence that is passed or stated. He said, not passed because he's not banging his gavel. But that's all he said in terms of whether she's a victim of anything possible in a previous relationship. And the only damage you can really tell is that she got introduced to Class A drugs. So that's it. That was the damage caused by the previous relationship. She, got herself hooked on coke and MDMA because those were the two drugs she was on. But coke is the one they talked about the most. Her MDMA usage appears to have died out, perhaps. So, this mitigation, this defence of her being a victim of domestic abuse, appears to be complete horseshit. And they're just clutching at straws in order to defend a psycho cokehead bitch. And another thing, one of the big talking points about this case was that Pringle didn't want to send Lavinia, I'm just going to move my microphone again, didn't want to send her to prison for fear of ruining her career. That might sound admirable, but sorry, matey, you're a bit too late on that front, because there's something called journalism, the press. Her name has been fucking plastered everywhere, okay? And as she said herself, she can't go out clubbing in London because she gets recognised out in the street. So, any career that she could potentially have has now been damaged because any idiot with half a brain cell go, I've got a new recruit, let's just give him a search on the old interwebs. You type in Lavinia Woodward into Google, and all you get is how she was off her tits on coke and stabbed her boyfriend in the leg. Now, I can't imagine too many medical facilities, any doctors, any hospitals hiring somebody with a history of drug use and domestic abuse. So the idea that he's trying to protect her career, well, sorry mate, too fucking late. That doesn't work. I'm going to move my microphone again. I keep getting fucking pissed off about where it is. It just seems so blah. Anyway. So this defence against her, or for her career, and just not sending her to prison, is disturbing, certainly, and the media outrage, in my opinion, has been completely justified. But what is also disturbing is not just the lack of prison, but the complete lack of charges. Firstly, the 2 previous assaults being ordered to lie on the court file, that really, really gets my goat. But also because, the choking to the point where you're passed out is a serious offence. It is on par with the stabbing, if not higher. But, not that, there's also the lack of offences, because she was sentenced for unlawful malicious wounding contrary to Section 20 of the Offences Against the Person Act 1861. And that is irrefutable. That happened. And how Pringle arrived at that sentence is given in the article by Secret Barrister, which I honestly think is a bit of a wet article. A bit sloppy. Yeah, it goes through how it happened, but doesn't really argue about how this isn't justified. He says, starting point of 18 months for the Category 2 offence but then was arbitrarily dropped down to 15 so that he could then go, it's divisible by 3 and I can drop it to 10 months because, she pleaded guilty. So, well, why didn't you start 18 months and divide it by 3? And then also, another thing that he mentions is about how it's a 3 centimetre cut to the leg. So that's, hardly trifling. It's not that much of a injury, so therefore, because it's not a heavy injury, you don't have to worry too much about having a longer sentence, because Section 20 states imprisonment of up to 5 years. And so the reason he started 18 months is because the injuries weren't too great, a couple of 1 centimetre cuts on the hand, which, depending where they were, could have got a tendons and lost movement in his fingers. So that's quite heavy. But then, the 3 centimetre cut to the leg, closed by 3 stitches, and minor cuts to fingers treated with stay strips. That's what it says in the Secret Barrister article. Now, I couldn't find a source for the 3 centimetre cut to the leg. I could see plenty of references, and it's even in the sentence in remarks about 3 stitches needed. But a 3 centimetre cut to the leg, I'm assuming that means length. How long the incision, the hack and stabby wound was. So 3 centimetres is about that. I mean, that's maybe 2.5, 3 centimetres. That's it. So what we're looking at, a 3 centimetre cut, is the height of the blade. Well, okay, cool. I can assume then that we're talking about a 3 centimetre long cut into the leg, which means he was stabbed in the leg. But how deep did the blade go? I have found next to no reference anywhere online about how deep the blade went into his leg. Because if it is a 3 centimetre cut, but the blade only broke the surface layer of the skin, then you can say, it's not that bad of an injury. But if it's a 3 centimetre cut to the leg and it went 6 inches deep, so what's 6 inches? If I take that and multiply it by 3, well, that's about 6 inches? I don't know. Ow, fuck. I just cut myself, bastard. But 6 inches into his leg. I'm pretty sure that will, you'll know that's a heavy injury. But then again, there are the mitigating factors earlier from how she intended to cause more damage. So, I think that he should have started higher, not the base 18 months, which is the lowest you can go for of a Category 2, Section 20, contrary to the Offences Against Person Act offence, or injury even. But then, he arbitrarily brings it down to 15 months, who can then divide it by 3 because she pleaded guilty early on. I mean, it's just, the whole thing is just fucked. But then also, if we look at other sections of the 1861 Offences Against the Person Act, we see, according to Section 18, that Miss Woodward, should also be facing a maximum penalty of imprisonment for life due to her intent to cause grievous bodily harm with a deliberately selected offensive weapon. Because in there it has statements or requirements that if they select a weapon with intent to cause grievous injuries, then it's contrary to Section 18. Well, she certainly selected weapons, or she selected a glass, a jam jar, a laptop, and then a bread knife. I mean, you select one of these to fucking cause somebody injury, you'd expect that to be included in your sentencing, but nope, apparently not. And she could have also been charged with Section 21 of the same act because she choked her boyfriend to the point of unconsciousness, but that was ordered to lie on the court file because fuck it. She also breached her bail conditions. Yes, I'd almost forgotten about that. Because she was told to stay away from the boyfriend. You psycho bitch, you stabbed him in the fucking leg. You don't go near him. But she breached these bail conditions to send a really long and, sloppy, I'm so sorry, message. Which, if anything, was just her way of wooing the court into pretending to show remorse. And I've discussed remorse previously in my Charlie Alliston article on the backbencher. Because as far as I'm concerned, the way the UK courts define remorse is a fucking joke. I'll briefly discuss that now. Because in the Charlie Alliston article that I wrote, I compare the Charlie Alliston case with the Jessica Wells case. She was on her bike, Jessica, doing 14 miles an hour over the speed limit. She was doing 44 in a 30 zone. And after having overtaken like a lorry and then undertaken a learner drive or something like that, she'd basically been dodging, ducking, dipping and diving and dodging all through the traffic. She then decided, while speeding, trying to slow down, mind, to undertake a parked bus. Now, question is, why do buses park? Well, it's to allow passengers to alight. And, believe it or not, that's exactly what was happening. A passenger was getting off the bus. It was at a bus stop, passenger was getting off. to leave. Well, poor fella, Ian Rose was his name, he was 80 years old. He got struck by Jessica Wells while she was doing somewhere between 30 and 40 miles an hour, and he died. He got killed. Now let's compare that to the Charlie Alliston case. Now remorse was mentioned in both cases. Wendy Joseph, or whatever her name was, who was the judge over the Charlie Alliston case, said, "You have shown no remorse," whereas the judge who presided over Jessica Wells' case says, "You have shown remorse." Now, how was remorse decided? Well, in the Jessica Wells case, she shed a few tears in the courtroom. She cried, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to do it, I'm such a bitch." Whereas Charlie Alliston, whilst he did not cry in the courtroom, he did try to kill himself. And actually, Wendy Joseph mentioned this. But instead of saying, "Hey, you tried to kill yourself," well, fuck, she said, "You're only doing this because you're trying to avoid punishment," which I think is a cuntish thing to say. Because he was found in a park with a rope and had to spend 9 days in South Maudsley Psychiatric Hospital because the police just wouldn't let him go because they were worried he'd try and kill himself again. So you'd think, yeah, poor fella, he's clearly remorseful, but nope, because he didn't cry in court, fuck you, you're going to jail, matey. So yeah, that's why I think the concept of remorse in UK courts is complete fucking bollocks. And so why I think that actually, even though she did send this message, it should have been considered as a breach of the bail conditions. But that is actually, believe it or not, a criminal offence. I mean, you can get a warrant to be returned to court to discuss it, and new bail conditions if you feel harsher conditions are required. But this was not done because gynocentrism. Oh yeah, although we have to be honest at the end of the day. She was never going to go to jail, was she? Because currently women account for 4.5% of the prison population. And this is caused by the fact that for about per 1,000 offenders of each sex, 3.3 times as many men are sentenced than women per year. 3.4 times as many men are sent to prison than women. Men receive on average a sentence which is 64% longer than for women, and women serve less of their sentence than men, 48% versus 53% respectively. The cards were always stacked in Miss Woodward's favour, being a Whammons and all that. Because what's it? They've got all these cute initiatives, haven't they? These agendas to close down women's prison. There's too many women in prison. And in fact, in the Equalities Handbook, the guidebook given to the judiciary, it says that women face all sorts of issues and discrimination, and this should be taken into consideration by the judiciary when sentencing women, that they should be treated more leniently because they might be mothers or they might become mothers, or there's all these mitigating factors, which is why I wasn't all that surprised to find in the sentencing remarks that the mitigating factors were fucking ginormous and the aggravating factors were all but non-existent because Ian Pringle, being the cuck that he is, has followed the guidance to the fucking T, right down to the final point. Judges are told, if the person you're sentencing is a Whammons, don't send them down. Oh well, good-o. But to make matters worse, the sentence cannot be reviewed, and that is it. It is final, because there is something called the unduly lenient sentencing scheme, which is if, in a circumstance such as this, somebody is sentenced and the sentence is, lenient. It's not right. This person should have gone to prison, which is why I did the entirety of the women who should be in prison series. Then you can review them, like I've said in a previous episode, and it's also on my blog. The link for it. However, this cannot be done for this case because unlawful malicious wounding is not covered by the unduly lenient sentencing scheme. And because it's all part of the same trial and everything, all wrapped up together, her previous attacks, dated, the 25th of November and 12th of December, I think they were. Where were they in my article? 25th of November and 12th of December, those two previous attacks cannot be reviewed either because they were all dealt with in the same trial. So, that's it. Game over. Finito. However, there was a little beacon of light, the glimmer of hope, that there was an investigation done. Complaints. I think it was 3 complaints were put to the Judicial Conduct Investigations Office. Unfortunately, all these complaints were dismissed because they were not directly applicable to his conduct. Yay. So, good-o. That means that's it. this is essentially the last we'll ever hear of Lavinia Woodward, should she never commit an offence again. However, chances are she probably will commit another offence, and we may hear of her, and I dare say that when we do hear of this other offence, the judge will go, oh, you didn't mean it this time, and yeah, sure, I'm supposed to send you down because you got a suspended sentence to your name, but, you know, they won't. As with the Lomas sisters, it doesn't matter how many times you go, or with Jeanette Fiddler, or the other people who I've got, I can't remember their names offhand. It doesn't matter if you've got a suspended sentence, you know, against your name. Who gives a shit? Oh well, that happens, doesn't it? That's just life. I mean, just look at that fucking smirk. You know, stab someone in the leg. Fucking bread knife. Whilst, you know, you're a cokehead. What was it I wrote? What was that fantastic opening line that I used? Because this, I feel quite proud of it. People do scroll all the way up. Aha, so I put an opening line for my article. This is good. Another day, another aberration of justice. Lavinia Clementine Woodward, now infamous for being a lying, cocaine-addicted, domestically violent, short-fused, belligerent wannabe heart surgeon, has managed to evade jail. I think that's a very good title for her. Lying, cocaine-addicted, domestically violent, short-fused, belligerent wannabe heart surgeon. I should have dropped in affluenza in there somewhere, how she's, you know, so rich she doesn't give a shit about the law, so she'd be let off. You know the sorts of people, you know who I'm talking about. Oh well. I suppose you're gonna get whatever you want in this world, so long as you're rich, pretty, and female. What was that about patriarchy again? Something, the world being all for men, blah, 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 blah. Oh well. And I'm gonna end this rather depressing episode. Yeah. I wouldn't say an injury from one of these would be trifling, but anyway. Whatever. Catch you in the next one. Toodle pip.